Hey, what's up, everybody? I've had a bunch of questions lately. People asking me how I liked my diesel swapped Jeep. So I figured I'd just make a video on it. For some people, I don't know if you're thinking about diesel swapping your Jeep. Here's just some things to think about. A little bit of facts that I've learned, at least while having mine and going through the thought process of wanting to swap. Which one do I do? And all that kind of stuff. Main want to do main reason people want to do these swaps, more power, better fuel mileage, that classic diesel sound. It's pretty cool. You used not to see it a lot, but now it's becoming more of a fad. More people are doing it, more people are wanting them. So these are kind of just some things that I've done, some research. So let's start with weight. The 4.0 fully dressed weighs about 600 pounds. So you got that. And then you got, obviously, the Cummins swap. You've got the Mercedes OM 617. You got the Volkswagen TDI. Those are your pretty common ones there. I've also seen some Kubota, some other small diesel, whatever people have done, somehow converted over. But those are your main three diesel swaps people do. So we'll go for weight purposes. The 4BT weighs in at about 750 pounds, usually fully dressed. So that's only 150 pounds more than the stock 4.0. People are always so scared. Oh, the Cummins, those are so much heavier. 150 pounds, that's nothing. That's a bumper, a bumper and some fenders or something. I don't see that being a big deal. You've got the 6BT, which I did. That weighs in at about 1,000 pounds fully dressed. People tell you all the time that's a stupid swap. It's not going to work, or it's too heavy. Yeah, I agree. It's a heavy motor. But for what I do in the mud in Florida, it works perfectly fine. If I was rock crawling somewhere, if this thing was always going over ledges, if this thing was on weird angles, I wouldn't do a 6BT just because the weight factor. But that's that. You got the OM 617, weighs 600 pounds usually. And then you got the TDI, the 1.9 Volkswagen motor. That weighs in at about 300 pounds. So that's some things to, take into consideration what this Jeep's going to be doing. If you want to have a low center of gravity, this thing's, going over ledges and could possibly flip. I wouldn't do 6BT. You can go, OM 617 weighs just about as much as the 4.0. It's one cylinder less, but it weighs the same. The TDI weighs half of the 4.0. And 4BT is 150 pounds more. So you got that. The power differences, stock 4.0, and all these numbers that I pulled straight off of Google on forums. These aren't, precise numbers, but the 4.0, 190 horsepower, 235 torque. 4BT comes in at 105 horsepower, 265 pounds of torque. So you're already dropped 85 horsepower, but you gain 30 pounds of torque. I don't know. You got torque, yeah, which it's helpful, but it's really not that much more performance-wise any better than the 4.0, I would say. You got the OM motor, 120 horsepower, 169 pounds of torque, which is less in all areas than the 4.0. And then the TDI is 100 horsepower, 177 pounds of torque, which is, again, less than the 4.0. So that's just some things to consider right there. That's just power. Those are just numbers. Also, another thing to consider when doing a diesel swap is pricing. 4.0s, obviously, you can find them in junkyards anywhere for pretty cheap. 4BTs are becoming extremely outrageously priced. You can't seem to find them for less than $2,000 anymore. $2,000 to $4,200 I've seen, and that's just ridiculous for a motor. And then you got these new 2.8s they came out with, $9 grand for a motor. I can't bring myself to spend that kind of money. So a 4BT, you know, $2,500 to $4 grand you're gonna spend on a motor. 6BTs, at least where I'm at, you can find them for about $1,000 usually running. So you got that. OM 617s, you can find a running car, at least where I am, for $500 up to $2,000 usually. I got mine. I had a Mercedes OM motor. It was I got it for $100, the whole car. I got it running, and it was slower than a dog turd. I don't know, I wasn't impressed. It took forever to spool up. It was, I know, it was just really slow. You know, then again, it was the Mercedes transmission and gearing. I mean, it just seemed to take forever to build any sort of power. I just really wasn't impressed with it. And then you got the TDI. I haven't done really much research on those. Never had one. So I'm not really going to go into those because I really don't know much about them. Other than stuff I've really seen online, the little bit that I have. Where was I going with this? Oh, yeah, pricing. So that's just another thing to consider. Also, the transmission, you know. You can run all sorts of transmissions with the Cummins because there's so many different adapters. They came in so many different varieties, Ford, Chevy, Dodge. So you've got a whole slew of transmissions you can use, which then gives you all kind of transfer cases. OM 617s, you're sort of limited. There's only a few that I've seen. You can use an adapter for your Jeep transmission. You know, that'll save you some money. You know, I don't really know with the Volkswagen motor. I couldn't really tell you. I didn't do any research on that. Let's see what else here. Wait. Next thing also to consider would be the support for aftermarket, performance-wise or parts in general. The OM 617 motors, there's really not too much you can do with them, other than stock stuff. I've seen some injectors for them. For 5 injectors, it was like $800. You know, I'm not going to pay that, and they really weren't much bigger than the factory injectors. And injectors don't really do much if you don't have the proper flow. So you'd have to get your pump tuned, bigger plungers, and for an OM pump tune is extremely expensive. And you can put an intercooler on them, and that's basically all you can do to those things. Even there's some little stuff here and there, but you're kind of limited on to what you're going to do with them. Again, I don't really know too much about the TDI motors, but with Cummins, you've got a whole bunch of aftermarket parts, turbos, injectors. You can tune the pump yourself on the pump itself. Free power right there. Basically, you turn a wheel, turn a couple screws. You can adjust everything on the fly like that. You know, I'm not trying to sell anybody Cummins. I'm not trying to say, you know, this is the best swap there is, but it's what I did. It's what I enjoyed. So it's what I know the most of. And another reason why I went with Cummins was because there's a large variety of aftermarket parts for them. You don't have to buy OEM because there's so much aftermarket after that. But Cummins OEM parts are expensive, so you need to, I guess, take that into consideration as well. But I went with the 12-valve Cummins in my Jeep. That's what I had. I got it in a trade, in a truck. The initial plan was to go 4BT, but I couldn't find one cheap enough that I wanted to pay. So I got a 6BT, and the plan was to trade it for a 4BT, because that's what everybody did. You know, I hadn't seen a 6BT done. But nobody wanted to trade. So people started telling me it couldn't be done. You know, you can't put a 12 valve in a Jeep, it's too heavy, it'll never fit, blah blah blah. I'm the type of person that you tell me I can't do something, I'm gonna do it just because you told me I couldn't. So long story short, I built a Jeep with 12 valve Cummins in it. So that's what I did. Oh yeah, another thing to consider that I thought was a cool feature in diesel swaps as well is you can run multi-fuel. I know you can with the Volkswagen, not with the Volkswagen, the Mercedes motor. You can run multi-fuel in, biofuel, veggie fuel. Same with Cummins. I run my Jeep on waste motor oil. I've run it on hydraulic oil. And diesel, of course. That's really all I've tried with it. I haven't done vegetable oil. That's a lot. Making waste vegetable oil into fuel takes a little bit more time. You gotta mix it with some ingredients, and I don't know, it just takes too much work for what I care to do. So I thought that was really cool. You can run, you know, you can throw anything in it really and run it. I thought that was a cool attribute to doing a diesel swap. The power, at least from the 12 valve, is stupid amount. This is basically a stock 12 valve. It's got bigger injectors, and I messed with the pump some. But it's, you know, I never thought I'd say it, but I think it's more power than it needs, anyways. Which is crazy, but you know, this thing, you get it going, and it's, you better get out of its way. Where was I going with this? I forgot what I was even talking about. Oh yeah, so I'm gonna kind of go over some things, what I've noticed with my Jeep in the past year that I've had it, some likes and dislikes. Obviously the likes would be pros and cons, multi-fuel. The gas mileage is incredible. I got up to 32 miles a gallon in this thing. I drove from my house to Daytona, and it took me 5 gallons to fill it up. It was right at about 31 point something miles at the gallon. You know, and that's incredible for me anyways. You know, and people are getting mid-20s with the 4BT swaps. So that's another thing to take in consideration when doing a diesel swap, is because, you know, the gas mileage is incredible. This thing, the motor got 18 or so in the truck, and this Jeep weighs easy half of what the Dodge weighed. So power, mileage is incredible. You know, I guess the only really complaint that I have would be it's loud. With the hard top, hard doors, windows up, I've kind of got to raise my voice to talk to my wife next to me while I'm, you know, driving down the road doing 60 mile an hour. Other than that, I really don't have any issues besides the throttle. And this may just be how I built it or how I set up my suspension, but you know, you start hitting bumps and you keep your foot still, and the whole whoa, it'll start rocking like that real hard. And that just may be, you know, my shocks aren't tuned correctly. Hey, sorry, the phone died right there at the very end. Basically, long story short, if you got your mind set on a diesel swap, it really is a night and day difference if you set it up correctly. But the key thing is to take into consideration, obviously budget plays a big role. Price and availability of the motor, price and availability of parts, aftermarket and stock, and then mainly the transmission setups that you can run will play a big role in deciding, depending on what this Jeep will be doing. So I appreciate you watching. Give me a thumbs up if you liked the video, so I know. I'd really appreciate it. You know, if you like it, hit the subscribe button. I want to be start doing a build on a LS Comanche, so you can keep you updated on my progress with that. But I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch y'all later.